IPMNation.com.
Live from the Outpost Studios in Columbus, Ohio, you're listening to All Natural Being with Brian Brawdy. Brought to you by IPMNation.com. Get ready for the gong heard round the world.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
All-Natural Being. Warning, All-Natural Being with Brian Brawdy is designed to shake your sense of self to the core.
It's full contact psychology with an empowering twist, a philosophical loofah for your soul.
For those of you not ready or comfortable releasing your inner superhuman, listener discretion is advised.
Here's your host,
Brian Brawdy.
Good evening and welcome. As I say, just about every moment, the beginning of every moment, right around this hour. Thank you for stopping by the 332nd episode of the number one rated show here on IPMNation.com. You're into All Natural Being, the gong heard round the world. Broadcast as it happens, we hope. Thanks to our friends at Wirecast, right here on IPMNation.com, and now multicast live on Facebook, YouTube, over at the allnaturalbeing.com page, and of course the new Brian Brawdy app. But however you come to hang with us, we're always pumped to have you with us, live from the Transitional Radio Uplink here in Columbus, Ohio, with rebroadcast on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, all the other usual suspects, as I say. Greetings wherever you are here in the Garden of the Mortals. And what a great gig it is, because winning or whining, it's up to you and me. Life, it's our labyrinth. It's your shot at running the table as you see fit. No committee vote. The hell with your critics. Time to ignore them and to own your primal scream. Not placing it on the back burner, not in a junk drawer, dustbin, but front and center in your life where it belongs. And your ability to do so is the reason that we're here to be your friendly force, to be your blue force, always putting your heart's highest priority top of the list, reinstalling and reinstating the true wit, wisdom, and wallop, I dare say, of your inner whisper, rebooting your robust, finding your ferocious, all in time, to outbrutal the brutal that is the cut and shuffle that fate can deal you on a daily basis, and to bring your own bold once and for all. But before we hit it this evening, hello to my friends here in the United States and Canada, Mexico, the UK, my good friends in Ecuador, China, the Philippines, Brazil, India, Australia, Germany, Italy, and France, Nigeria, Turkey, Japan, Singapore, Thailand, Belgium, Sweden, Israel, South Africa, Egypt, Puerto Rico, Kenya, the Netherlands, Colombia, Greece, Ireland, Peru, Poland, to those joining us from all over the globe. It really is truly great to have you with us, and I am fired up to be driving your bandwagon, to be your virtual hitchhiker if you're out and about this evening and on the go, always to be your biggest fan, to be avidly you. But before we jump into tonight's show, the question of the hour, the question of every hour, why let anyone hijack your cognition, to play you like a sock puppet, to rush your cognitive cockpit? Because the days of needlessly torturing yourself by being someone else's tool, they're over. Once we decide it's time to take life into our own hands. So what are we waiting for? Let's mark this show as our opportunity to mortal up. Let's go kick in some doors. And tonight, some thoughts. We're going to do a repeat of one of the thoughts we had last night because the internet was acting up a bit. But think of it as thinking at the tip of the spear kind of stuff. First, it's about a mindset I call never be owned. Never be owned by your fears and the fight or flight chemicals they produce. They work for you. You don't work for them. Never be owned by your hopes and your goals, your bucket lists, the perpetual angst of habitual binge thinking. Come what may, you're built to own this particular day. Never be owned by the mashugana of the marketplace, the witless whim of your critics, and the spew of their static quo. Their negative opinion of your positive self-image, they don't need it. Never be owned by worry caused at either the micro or at the macro level. You're stronger than your worst heartache. Never be owned, a casualty of another's demented cognition, misery looking for a partner, a sitting target or a scapegoat for their personal softening of the brain. Their mania has no place in your mind. And always remember, never be owned by the slave mentality, where your mind is played like a marionette. Live free to greet your time here in the garden of the mortals with all the grit that glues you together. Live free to dive the rabbit hole and say, oh, hell yes, to the labyrinth of life. Live so that the abyss fears you staring into it. I like Nietzsche. Little tweak on what he had to say. Your circumstances don't own you. You own them. Every event unfolds as fortuitous to a free mind finely honed. You decide, victim or victor. You alone discern how it bounces or crumbles. They're your balls and your cookies. You own your space. It doesn't own you. Never be owned. And to that, I would add the concept of exiting existence as we know it. What if we're all wrong about how it operates? What if we've been taught that what we think is real isn't really the truth? Existence in reality is more of a process, a transaction between your mind and the very moment you are in. An incubator breeding and rebreeding your intellect and the instant at hand. You and this instant, I guess you could say it's like an estuary. You have an estuarial relationship. You know, in terms of an estuary where a river comes down, right where the river water meets the ocean, right where the current meets the tide. You have that estuary. Well, what if that's what existence really is? What if that's the way you and I are to exist? Intimately intertwined and aware of the moment at hand. Now, the ego is designed to take us outside of that moment. The ego is designed to distract us, to derail us. But what if reality, real reality, is a cocktail, is a mixture of your mind in this moment? When I say all the time, magnify your moment. The ego calls you outside of that. And when we talk about never be owned by your bucket list, by your goals, by your to-do list, by your fears, by your worries, by your concerns. Never be owned. Not because, I guess, you could have a slave mentality. I guess it works for some folks. But more importantly, because it leaves you with blinders on. It leaves you unaware of what's going down in this particular moment in all of time. And I would suggest that when we're blocked from seeing, when we're blocked from rising to the challenge that this particular moment brings us, rising to the challenge and meeting it with our natural resources, that's what makes us unhappy. So exiting the existence as we know it is the true and only key to happiness. Because I believe in the fingerprints of providence. I believe that the divine, in whatever definition you give it, Big Bang, Big Breath, Garden of Eden, Savannas of Africa, Petri dish or a pulpit, right? White robe or a white lab coat. You make the call. However you define it, those fingerprints of providence are there. And for those people awake enough, those people enlightened enough, which you already are, to recognize what's unfolding in the estuarial relationship between your mind and the moment, that's the key to happiness. That's the key to success. Because I think the universe absolutely digs and therefore backs someone that pays attention to the fingerprints of providence. A mind perfectly crafted to rise to the challenges at hand. And I think when we talk about exiting existence, oh, we'll be happy if we have this. Oh, we'll be happy when we get that. Sandberg's hope, it is an echo that calls you yonder, yonder, yonder. But what if we're being so distracted by this hope of where we one day want to be that we miss where we are right now? And we're owned by a mindset contrary to what goes down in this particular moment in all of time. So as you walk through this moment, as you sift, as I say in the best acronym, as you sift the moment at hand, what are the synchronicities? What are the serendipities? What are the chances, encounters that employ and can employ your human wherewithal, your potential, just this side of infinity? And then when you throw yourself into the abyss, I meant it when I said, Nietzsche's worry about the abyss. Live your life so that the abyss is scared to death that you're going to stare back at it, that you'll reach into this particular moment in all of time and take exactly what's good for you. You're not ever, never be owned. And that's what I think we can talk about tonight. All right, let me jump in and say hello to some folks here in the thread. Rita, thank you so very much. Susan, thank you for joining us. I hope the internet's a little bit better tonight. Susan, we're trying to figure out what we can do at our end to make that work. And Wayne, thank you very much for your call a little earlier. I think we're on top of it. Henry, thank you for joining us, brother. I'm glad you and Rita made it home safely. As Henry says, bring on the rabbit holes. Love the abyss. I'm with you, Henry. Pigeonholes, those are for other people. Rabbit holes, now that's what makes your mouth water. Other people want to pigeonhole you? Okay. They want to have some sense of their life being like a discounted tchotchke on a markdown table at the back of a 5 and dime store. Let them. But their pigeonholes need not derail your philosophy. John, good evening. Thank you for joining us. Hi, Misty. Thank you for joining us here at All Natural Being. We're talking, say hey to Mom Alice Lindsay. To Mom Alice Lindsay finally joining in. Well, hello. And to Lee, thank you so very much. As Henry says, we are intertwined. The energetic level is universally connected. One big knitting project. Right? Where you take your mind in the moment at hand, like a doily, what was it, knit or crochet, a cognitive crochet. That's what we're looking for. When we talk about exiting existence, and it's us, this small little, hard little golf ball, right, rolling through life, subject to circumstances, or a cognition crocheted with the elements at hand. Again, if I didn't say hello to Lee, hello, Lee. Let me try this again. Rita says, love all those phrases because they are spot on. Thank you, Rita, so very much. Thank you, Susan. All right, I think I've gotten everyone here that's in the thread. And the distance between this we see as real and what is actually real is a very thin line. I would absolutely agree with you, Henry. Janelle, good evening. Alice Lindsay, there's what I'm looking for. Hello to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Janelle, thank you. One big matrix. Henry, I think I absolutely agree with you. That'll come as a shocker, right? Oh, wait, hold the press. Brian agrees with Henry. Next thing you'll be telling us he agrees with Lee and Rita. Oh, and John, hold the press. And Susan. But we're talking this evening about exiting existence as we know it. And I can't help talking about it without a huge smile coming to my face, because imagine what it's like if every moment is a carnival. Every moment is an opportunity for you to put your heart's highest priority top of the list, and guess who is backing you? The universe. The fingerprints of Providence. What if what we've been taught about reality is all a scam to get us to own more stuff? And then once we own more stuff, we're owned by that very stuff. I think about it. Oh, I think I'll pack up and hit the road. Yeah, I got a little bit of a studio here to take along with me. It's going to be one hell of a backpack. Henry calls them gunny sacks, right? So I'm tethered. I'm tied. Lee and I talked about it last evening, with how great it felt to give up the iPhone. How great it felt not to be tethered dog collar, choke collar, a leash, whatever you want to call it, but not to be tethered to it in that particular moment. Never be owned. And our ability to exit this existence that we've been so taught, that we've been guaranteed is real, all we got to do is magnify the moment. Because here's what I've come to understand. When it comes to Jung's synchronicities, serendipities, when it comes to happenstance, fortune, fate, luck, any of these things that go down, that when you take a deep breath and you step back, you go, you know what? There's not as much coincidence there as I first thought. Really, I guess you could look at it and say there is a coincidence. Two things, your brain, your cognition, crocheting with the moment at hand. That's what comes out. That's what comes on board. John says, we haven't existed till we wake up. John said, ooh, from the American dream. From any dream, I'd say, John. You got it. Rita says, the stuff owns you. All right, let's take our first call. Where? Let me see. Which one am I hitting here? There you go. Good evening. Welcome to All Natural Being. Who's this?
Good evening from Ecuador.
Ecuador. Very nice. Well, I have to tell you, I'm a little bummed that you're no longer in North America. You know what I mean? But I can imagine it had to be great to get back and unload your stuff, put your feet up on your own chair, brush your teeth in your own sink, that kind of thing. I can imagine that had to feel pretty good to be home.
Yeah, being home is a lot of fun. It really is. It was a long haul, a big long haul, very successful. Thank you.
Good.
Back up north, and now it's time to really get busy.
Well, I'm glad to hear it. So give us a sense, and before we jump into it this evening, before we open up the calls, so you say you're really going to get busy, time to get into it. What have you been working on? Give us you sound great, by the way. What's up? You doing sit-ups, push-ups, are you? Watching what you eat? Why you sounded so good all of a sudden?
Me up here.
Yeah, deep knee bends, Bri. Oh, okay, cool. Well, the deep knee bends, they work. No, you sound great. What's going on? Do you have a new microphone?
Yeah, finally getting the equipment hooked up slowly but surely.
Good.
And, testing it out as we go along. So it's working. Things seem to be doing well, thank goodness. But looking forward to really getting this transitional radio off the ground, and really pushing it, and really looking to get the different segments going. So, and officially, I would love to thank you and to welcome you to Transitional Radio, my friend.
Thank you, brother. I am thrilled to be doing it. I was talking to Wayne not 15 minutes. For those of you that don't know that Wayne and Henry happen to know each other, oddly enough, they had the same last name. But Wayne was on with me, and he talked. How many brothers do you have, by the way, Henry? God, you're worse than my family tree. We get brothers all over the place. Some of them I just learned about of late at the family reunion. But he was talking to another brother of yours and said, oh, man, what you're doing there in the studio is all bass-ackwards. Here's what you got to do in order to pull it off. So I'm like, whoa, then. All right, that's what we'll be working on. So thank you to Wayne if you're listening. Every time I talk to Wayne, I learn more. It's like talking to you, Henry. I learn more. So we're pretty fired up about not only transitional radio, but what we're going to be able to do, right? Because I felt, as Susan was saying last evening, that it was tough with the internet cutting in and out. So we're going to do everything we can to make sure if the internet cuts in and out, it's not at our end. And your brother came up with some great ideas and shared them with Wayne as to how we can do that to make sure that voice and video and all the things that we want to do aren't competing for one teeny tiny little bandwidth of web, whatever it's called, right? Wayne had some big name for it. I didn't understand, right? My eyes just kind of gloss over. There's the DNS and there's this and that. And I go, yeah, okay, I'm good. But I trust Wayne. I know Wayne's doing it. Let me say good evening to Candace. Candace, thank you for joining. Also, Parker. My son Parker, oldest son Parker, is here this evening. Hello, Parker. And everyone.
Hi, Parker.
Henry, do you mind if I brag for a second?
Please.
So today I get this video, and I open it up, and I go, oh, look, there's a video. Oh, and it's from Parker. That's pretty cool. I get a video. Parker, a senior in high school, and Parker, jump in here, and if I'm wrong, but the senior in high school going for a bench pressing record, right? He bench pressed 300 pounds today.
Wow.
Yeah, a small little frame of a guy. Yeah, wasn't that something else? He bench pressed 300 pounds. And so I asked him, I said, well, how did you do it? Did you get in? Did you psych yourself up? No, I did 187,000 reps at 280 pounds. And then I did 159,000 reps at 290. But so he does, we told it all up. He did like 35 reps of some ungodly amount of weight. And then he goes, I think I'll go for 300. So I thought, wow. What could he do? He says third highest bench in school history right now. That's getting ready to fall. I can tell you that much, Parker. That's getting ready to fall because
he's just started.
He's just started. Right? So now it's all, hey, let's protect those shoulders. I told him, let's not blow out a rotator cuff. Go nice and easy. But if he could hit 300 at the end of 35 other lifts, it'll weight more than I could do. It's funny. He says, well, I warmed up with 285. I go, yeah, 285? I think they'd have to call the paramedics if I tried to get that up off a bench, right? Way to go, Parker. Rita, thank you very much. So, and I think Susan's right. That's confidence.
Absolutely it is. That's amazing. I mean, Parker, congratulations, because that's phenomenal.
Isn't that something?
Taking a nap just watching you.
Yeah, I could nod off right now. Candace says, she's talking about the internet here, Henry. It says, when it freezes and I can still hear you, but you are froze with the funniest expressions on your face. Now, that's just my normal face, Candace. You go, oh, Brad, that was a pretty funny face. Yeah, I've had that for a few years. Thank you very much. That's just me, right? I was talking to Lee about it earlier today. Parker says, thank you, everyone. Well, I'm very proud of you, Parker. That's great. And what I said to him, Henry, and it kind of dovetails nicely into what we're talking about this evening, is that sense of progressive adaptation. Remember when, I'm going to sidetrack this for just a minute if you don't mind. You remember Roger Bannister. Mm-hmm. Everybody and their brother fired up about, whatever the record was at the time. No one could break the 4-minute mile.
Right.
Then Roger Bannister goes, yeah, I don't know. I think I can break the 4-minute mile in running. And then what happens? Like an hour and a half later, college kids, high school students all over the world are breaking it because in the collective human mind, 4-minute mile was doable. Roger Bannister was the first to do it. I believe I've got the story right. Maybe there was someone that we don't know, right, that broke it before. He broke it in the record books. But now that Parker's hit 300, it's already in the collective consciousness. Mm-hmm. So when it comes to going to 305 to 310 to 315, and I think he's only got like 15 pounds before he either ties the record or is number one at his high school in Illinois. But he's already achieved the 300. So the cat's out of the bag, right? I don't want to say there's no drum roll for it, but because he's already hit the 300, now he can kind of downplay all the other buildup, 35 reps at ungodly weight to get to that point. What would it have been like if he had walked in, warmed up a little? What would it be like for any of us if we had the confidence knowing that we could put our heart's highest priority, top of the list, already guaranteed? We don't go through all the different warm-up reps, but we just go in and go, put 300 on the bar. I'll do it right now. He absolutely could have done 305 today if he hadn't done 35 reps of all this other weight. So I'm very proud of you, Parker. Great job. And I would say here in the thread to other people listening, you got maybe not 300 pounds, right? Maybe not in terms of actually going and doing a bench press. But what is it that you have inside of you that you could pull off too? And maybe it's your mind that keeps you from achieving that goal. That's why I'm constantly, what was Parker says, 20 pounds from setting my own record at highest bench in my high school history. Congratulations.
Wow.
That's great, Parker. Congratulations. I'm very proud of you. Right? So, Henry, for other people listening, what about this Roger Bannister? What about no one could break the 4-minute mile until he did, but once he did, everyone and their brother. Thank you, John. He says, keep up the great work. What do you think about that?
We all spend a lot of time justifying why we can't do something.
Sure.
That is just too far out of reach. We just can't quite make it. Or I love the one, I'll try.
Right.
You may as well not at that point.
Right.
But the realization is that when someone actually does break the record or does set the bar up a little bit higher, well, okay, that can be done. And you'll get a flood of constant drops, and swimming is the same way. You've seen them go for world's records and Olympic records, and they just start to fall. This is what humans really are, not what we think they are. There is no limit to what we can achieve. And we have to look at it as every step we take in our life. If you want to look at it as how do we leave the baggage behind instead of dragging it with us, every time we take a step, the foot that's behind us, it's like exiting. It's sort of like a death. That moment is now gone, and here is the next moment. And that's a rebirth. So we literally do die and rebirth ourselves every step we take throughout our lives. And so if we can continue to do that, we don't set limits on ourselves. There just aren't any.
Well, and I would say that human physiology kind of dovetails with what you're saying there. Right, Henry? Because, and I don't know the particulars of it, I'm sure you do, but, human lungs are regrown, the cells are repurposed every number of weeks, months, years. Human skin changes. I'm not sure that there is a cell within the human body that isn't constantly in this cauldron of death and birth, death and birth, death and birth, death and birth.
Absolutely. And if we can place the correct intention every time, as these cells are replaced, our skin cells are replaced constantly, our digestive systems are replaced constantly, we can, by placing positive apparitions on that, change these cells and avoid going into the downward spiral that we all get into as we get older.
Sure.
Getting older is related to time. We're energy, and energy doesn't have time or space. It simply exists, and we have to learn it. We just have to keep learning this.
Let me say quickly hello to Alice Lindsay again. Alice, I wanted to say to you that John is always very inspirational, always spot on in terms of his comments here in the thread, and the show owes its run to the top. It owes it in no small part to John's always sharing our stuff, always out there. So that I get a chance to meet you, I wanted to make sure that I get a little bit of chance to brag about John too, because we wouldn't be in the position if it weren't for some of the people, and John is most certainly on that list. Rita says, all we have to do is ask, why not? And I think, and if Parker's still here, maybe he can comment on it, but I think, Henry, that when we get to that point, the 4-minute mile, the 300 bench, everything else, once we know it's in the bag, doesn't it? Like, Parker, I'm curious, do you just think now, you go, wow, well, of course I can lift 305 or 310, or I can get all A's, or I could do this, or I can do that. Once we realize that it's a barrier that we've broken through, does that help us become experts at breaking other barriers? I mean, can we look back and go, what the hell else has held me in check throughout my life? So when you nail your first 300-pound bench, do you get to look around and go, all right, welcome to the jungle. What else is there that I can go after? How else can I put my heart's highest priority top of the list? What say you, Henry?
Absolutely right. If you simply place yourself in the position of control, that we actually are the controllers of our next step, of our destiny. We actually are the ones that do it, and it isn't us that derails it. We allow it to be derailed. We can accomplish anything. We see a world that is in chaos at this point, where no one can get along. Brothers and sisters are killing each other for no real reason except some made-up idea. And that can all stop. It can stop in a heartbeat if we just woke up and said, we're not going to do this anymore. This is not what the world is about.
Well, that's kind of what I meant last evening, and I did it again for Susan. Susan says, one must be teachable. She talks about reteaching our minds from what we've been taught, and I did, never be owned, because the internet was cutting out last night while we were trying to do it, but never be owned by those things. It's not, and maybe it is in a militant way that I mean it, but never be owned, because you leave your mind open for the dynamic, energy-converting crochet magnet that it is, right? When you're not busy owned by something else, you're aware of what's going on. As Susan says, I think this is what she's saying, that it leaves you very teachable. Alice, you're more than welcome. Alice says, thank you so much, Brian. I am pretty proud of him. And, of course, she's referring to John. My absolute pleasure, Alice. So, Henry, doesn't that leave us open once we hit a record like a 300-pound bench? Can't we start looking around and go, wow, how else have I held myself in check? How else have I kept myself from experiencing my heart's highest priority, top of my list?
You know, it's funny that we know we learn. From the time we were an infant, we have learned, and we continue to learn. It's what we learn that is the situation and the issues that we have to deal with. So if we already know we can learn, then we can unlearn and reteach ourselves and relearn what we need to get our all-natural being out there, to not be the thin skin, to not have the direction of the world or the way politics or religion goes, to simply say, no, I'm going to redo this, I'm going to rethink this, and I'm going to just relive it because it's just not the way I want to see this.
And I think we have all kinds of examples now. Candace, thank you very much. She says, Parker, please let us know when you break that record. Well, now, Candace, here's the thing. I said to Parker earlier today, Henry, the record is in reach, but let's not go crazy. Let's relax a little. Let's smooth into it. Let's wait for your shoulders to catch up with the strength of your muscles. So I'm with you, Candace. I just hope it's a month or two away so that he has plenty of time to grow into this newfound strength. John says, BitTube make cryptocurrency for watching videos, even more for posting videos. Thank you, John. Bit.tube. John throws up here in the thread. Thank you for that heads up. There you go. Bit.tube make cryptocurrency for watching videos, even more for posting videos. Wow, look at that. I don't know that much about cryptocurrency, Henry. I have to be honest with you. But, John, thank you for sharing that with us. I appreciate it. So, Henry, when we talk about exiting existence as we know it, Susan might say to remain teachable, the existence that I'm referring to exiting is this constantly being pulled to the horizon, constantly being drawn outside of this particular moment in all of time. And then when you exit that treadmill, when you exit that escalator, only then are you truly, and I don't want to say, because now the big thing is to say woke. I'm woke. Whatever. Right? But when you're awake enough, right? When you're awake enough to pay attention to what's unfolding, the present, the true present that is the moment at hand, then I think you have nothing more.
Yeah, no, you got it. There's so much. You know, I guess the best way to look at this in order to approach it, it is really so simple to open your eyes and simply declare to yourself, I'm not going to put up with this anymore. I'm going to change. I'm going to change. Of course, now it's what do you got to do to change? Sure. But we do have that capacity to do that, to change our entire way of looking at it. You know, we've been taught how to do what we do, and we've learned it extremely well. And we sit in the middle of wars and death and poverty, and and segregation like you've never seen before, and hatred that is just running amok. So yeah, we do have to reboot. We have to stop what we're doing and reboot and retake a look at, change our perceptions. Retake a look at the way we see things and how we deal with things, and above all else, stop reacting.
Well, that's another thing to be.
Way to give up control.
Right. Well, that reacting is a part of, my call to never be owned.
That's it.
Because a reaction means that the outside stimuli. Oh, and Henry, I thought if you can see your screen right now, everyone, here's our new graphic. Proud to be teaming with Transitional Radio. Isn't that nice? Wayne did that. And Lee, thank you very much. Lee Rowley, if you're still here in the thread, was his inspiration and artwork. So a thank you to both Wayne and to Lee. So is that what Transitional Radio is going to be talking about, Henry? And we talk, right? Because Parker today transitioned from someone that's never benched 300 to someone that will probably never be satisfied benching anything in the 200s, right? There was a transition. There was a change for him. Susan, thank you very much. Susan says, I love your thinking, Brian, and Henry, love your realness. Susan, we're so glad you're with us. So glad everything went well. It was the beginning of this week, I think, or maybe over this past weekend. So I'm glad to see you doing so well, Susan. Lee, thank you very much. Love it. And as I said, I got the logo because of Lee. So Lee, thank you. And it's Wayne's expertise, Henry, that you just give something to Wayne. Wayne goes, hey, give me a minute. Go get a sandwich. You know what I mean? Go get some cookies. You go do something. Go do whatever. Just come back, and he'll call and go, hey, you near your computer? And I go, I just walked away. He goes, yeah, well, could you run down and look at it again? And then he whips up stuff like this. So I thank you to Lee for the inspiration, and a thank you again to Wayne to pulling it all off. Lee says, love it. Well, thank you very much. All right, so Henry, let's talk about transitional radio. And as I said, we'll use Parker, right? Transitioned from someone that had never benched 300 into that person that'll never be comfortable, never be content benching 295 again, right? It's just not in the card. So talk to us about what happens. And when we don't look back, I put a picture up the other day over on Facebook that it said that, we're not going in reverse. So why do we bother looking back there? And we're not heading that way. Why look that way?
Mm-hmm.
So that part of the transition is once we get there, then we don't have to be pulled down by the memories of the past unless we want to, right? But again, never be owned.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. We don't have to. And, we when we walk, we don't walk backwards. We do. I mean, unless you want to see where you've been, you really don't walk backwards. So every step that we do takes us to a future, or actually it takes us to a now. Mm-hmm. And every time we reach that now, we have that decision to make to take the next step to the next now. Mm-hmm. And the pleasure that you get, the happiness that it reveals by achieving, by transitioning,
sure,
by accomplishing that little task, and that's no pun at all. I mean, right. You realize Susan and what she has gone through, what you have gone through, what Parker has just accomplished. We all face challenges in our lives, and if we simply look at them as just that, it's a challenge. It's not an impossibility. It's a challenge.
Challenge.
And in fact, my dad used to tell me the only thing that's impossible, Henry, is picking yourself up by the collar of your neck and the belt of your pants and picking yourself up 3 feet off the floor and throw yourself out a door. That's about the only impossibility you've got. And I question that sometimes, but we really have ourselves as our only limitation. There is no other limitation we can do except do to ourselves.
Right. And our baggage, right? When you talk all the time about, when I say don't be a philosophical Sherpa, Mitzi says, these live videos feel like church to me in a good way. Thank you, Mitzi, very much. I appreciate it. I'm great with the concept of religion being the binding together of different things. And I think what we're talking about, Mitzi, and maybe that's why maybe it's a subconscious feeling. We're talking about to binding together with a mind and the moment at hand. Mm-hmm. Right? And I remember, Henry, when I was back in my law enforcement days, Susan says, thank you, feeling stronger every day. Well, I'm very glad to hear that, Susan. Very glad to hear that. I remember back in law enforcement, one of the most powerful teachers that I've had in my life, a guy named Lloyd Perkins. He was a sergeant at the time, the detective sergeant. And he was the first one to teach me this concept of whenever a bad guy or a bad girl hits a crime scene, they always take something away, but they always leave something behind. A fingerprint, DNA, a boot print, a tire print. Someone else saw them. They always leave something behind. So from a very early time in law enforcement, and still to this day, what I love about the concept of magnifying the moment is to try to find those clues. And that, to be honest with you, that's where I came up with the term fingerprints of providence. One of the very first things I did before I even made detective was learn how to throw fingerprint powder around. And Perk was instrumental in teaching me that and, how to look for other evidence, cigarette butts that might have DNA on them, I don't know if I ever told you this, but I responded to a burglary one time where the bad guy climbed through the window and his wallet fell out as he was climbing through the window. Yeah, well, there's that, right? You have the right to remain silent, although you're already talking volumes, so I just keep on going, Needle Nits. I got your driver's license. You don't live here. Chances are pretty good you didn't belong here, right? But so you can't always find evidence that glaring. You can't, but those things are there. The fingerprints or providence are there, and that's what's so exciting to me about walking in. And people go, can you believe that just happened to you? Yes, I can. You know, what is this particular moment in all of time trying to get me to wake up and see? And I absolutely love that about exiting existence, at least the way I was taught, and going, what is the roulette wheel? What's the universe going to do right now? And can I be smart enough to find that evidence, just like back in law enforcement, find that evidence so that I can get a conviction? We used to call it bag it and tag it, right? You'd find evidence, bag it, tag it. It would go in an evidence locker. You know what I mean? It's the same thing now. Mitzi says, it's the inspirational ideas. The difference is church usually made me feel heavy and guilty. Well, Mitzi, thank you so very much. And I would say, and Henry, hi, Diane. Let me say hello to hi, or hello and hi to Diane as well. Thank you for joining us here at All Natural Being. Nothing, I think probably, like you, that's one of the biggest hurdles for me in terms of religion was that sense of feeling heavy and guilty. And guilty for what? Right, Henry?
Well,
so that's why I think they're having such a hard time now, organized religion.
Oh, it is. And it's really been such a problem for humanity because we deal with the heaviness of it all. It's the guilt and following it through, and that there's no win. It's a lost situation for you. No matter how much you worship, no matter how much you give, you can't win because you've already been condemned because of a sin from thousands of years ago.
Sure.
It makes no sense to me. It really never did. That I don't believe that an all-loving spiritual guide or God would give us no way, create us to do nothing but suffer and feel like we have to pay back. That just doesn't make sense to me. It just never did. As a child, it made sense to me. I remember my dad taking us to church, and that was the question I used to ask him all the time. Dad, if you love me and Mom loves me, and you showed me you love me, but they're saying that God loves me, but he does nothing but terrorize you. It's
exactly right.
And smites.
Right.
How is that love?
A lot of smiting.
So I questioned it right from the
Sure. Well, you know what? I questioned Henry early on. I mean, very early on. I remember this, or having this memory, was that if God's all-knowing, if omniscient, omnipotent, all-knowing, all-powerful, all these other things, then he set Eve up. Right? In law enforcement, right? In law enforcement, we'd say, yeah, he entrapped her. Right? And which is always, people say to me, oh, well, you know the story of Judas, don't you? And I go, yeah, Judas, great guy. And people go, great guy? And I go, well, if Jesus shared that same omnipotence, omniscience, he knew what Judas was going to do. If the whole thing was written in advance and God said, hey, here's what's going to go down, God knew what Judas had to do.
Exactly.
God calls him and says, can you check your voicemail? Right? I need you to do this thing for me. And Judas goes, well, I'm not doing that. Everyone's going to hate me. And he goes, come on, you got to take one for the team. You got to blow him in, right? So they can come and arrest him. Because the story doesn't work without Judas. The story doesn't work without Adam and Eve.
That's absolutely true.
And John says, all-knowing and all-powerful, perfect being created broken humans. I got to tell you, we might get to a stage in life where we're broken, John, but I don't believe we were created broken. I don't, I have a hard time believing that. We might, like Yoda says in Star Wars, Mitzi, if you'll let me blend two religions, Yoda says in Star Wars, and Henry mentioned earlier, you must undo, right, what you have done. Mm-hmm. You must unlearn what you have learned.
Yes.
Do or do. Hey, what does he say? Always with you what cannot be done. Do or do not. There is no try.
There is no try.
There's no try. Exactly. Do it or don't do it. Put the 300 pounds up off your chest, Parker, or don't put the 300 pounds up off your chest. Right? In that moment, You either bench press or you don't bench press. You either rack it or you feel it on your sternum, right? I'd like to say that's a lot more deeper than that, but it isn't.
No, it really isn't. And when you go back through, look in the Bible, in Mark and Matthew and Luke, where Jesus was tempted 3 times by the devil.
Right.
And when he refused the temptations 3 times, the devil departed. He left. Well, has anybody ever thought about who the devil was? I mean, the church makes it real easy for you because they just call it Satan.
Right.
But have you really thought about it? To me, the 3 temptations came from ego.
Absolutely. Well, think about it, Henry. That's a very valid, very smart point. Let me also say points that I've come to expect from you, brother, right? Because all the things that he was petitioning, right, were Jesus' ego, right?
That's it. And I firmly believe, he did that, and
Okay.
the only thing that separates us from Jesus is the fact that Jesus separated himself from his ego. He didn't get rid of it. He simply separated himself and controlled it. And we can do the same thing. It's just that we've been told we can't.
Right.
And we believe that. And I believe that that's the only difference between Jesus and us is the ego, is us being able to control the ego.
And I will tell you, it's the Gospel of Thomas that made a huge impact in my life. Henry, in the Gospel of Thomas, as you know, it says, if you bring forth what is within you will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you.
Will destroy you.
Right? So all
That's
these people say, I think enlightenment would be great. And I think, look, it's going to kick the crap out of you. You better work on getting your enlightenment back because it's not going to sit there forever. It's got a born-on date, right? And you find that people are depressed. Look at the opioid addiction. Look at all the different things going on in the world. And you think, okay, don't be owned. Never be owned by whatever that addiction is. I was talking to Lee yesterday about it, right? I'm addicted to having a phone with me all the time, right? Oh, what's the weather? Well, go outside and look up into the sky to figure out if it's right. Oh, I got to know what the radar says, what it's going to be doing here in 2 hours. Right? I get an idea. Drag your fat tuchus back inside in 2 hours. Then you don't have to worry if it's raining, right? But I become addicted to having this little phone. John says, stop buying the story and start creating your own stories. I absolutely agree with you, John. And John's going to be traveling around looking for stories. Susan says, the church terrifies me. 28 years ago, I had a priest tell me we are all God's children as long as you're... And Susan, I'm sorry, we can't, for whatever reason, we can't see Seymour, but I bet all of us have a way of filling in the end of your sentence. We are all God's children as long as you're... I remember we were excommunicated from the church because my mom got divorced. Here she is raising 5 kids, but we weren't allowed to go to church because she got divorced.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, but it is so ludicrous. I mean, that's not what it's all about. And it is just so hard to really come to terms. I mean, it really does. It frustrates me to no end on how many people are so tied up with religion that is completely misdirecting them. And they don't understand that the spirituality that is out there is what's going to save them because it forces you to look inside, and that is where all the answers are.
And that's why I've always thought, Henry, when it says all these things went down in the desert and then he left and Jesus was there, right? Didn't say Jesus disappeared. It didn't say, it was to say, no, once the ego left, there was him in the wilderness. And that's why I think of when you look at all these religions in the world, when you look at Moses went up on a mountain, Jesus went into the desert, Buddha sat under a tree, Arjuna from the Hindu faith had the open grassy fields, Muhammad went into a cave, Jacob had to send everyone, it makes it very clear, he had a pillow of stones. He sent everyone across the fjord before he had a battle with the angel. Joseph Smith was alone in the woods of Palmyra, New York. And I know I've said this to you before, and I've probably said it here in the thread. Let me say hello to Roberta quickly. Thank you for joining us here at All Natural Being. If the divine can come to you, as it did to Joseph Smith, in the woods of Palmyra, New York, the divine can come to you anywhere. You ever been to the Sacred Grove?
No, the divine is already with us.
It's already with us,
I mean,
right?
It's never left us. We've just buried it so deep with all of our learnings that we need to unlearn, that we can't find it. And so, like humans, we go out and about to try to find it. I mean, when you really look at all of these apparitions, all of these stories that are told, they came face to face with themselves.
Yep.
Looked in the mirror.
Yep. Alone in the wilderness. Think about it.
Yes.
Always. Always, always, always. Abraham, alone in the wilderness. And that, for me, when I first learned of the Sacred Grove, and I first learned of Palmyra, New York, that was the final wake up call that says that spark, because as I've often said, in terms of the divine, you are a great grandchild of the divine. Whatever the divine turns out to be, Henry.
That's right.
Because what the hell do you know? What the hell do I know? None of us know, right? We really don't know what the divine is. But we do know you are a spark of that divine, however it turns out to be.
Yes, and the way, and I think killing our fellow human beings is not the direction and the answer to what the divine is. It just doesn't make any sense that the divine would create his children and then put them out on a battlefield to kill each other. I just don't buy it.
Nor do I. Susan says here in the thread, she goes, I never push my beliefs on anyone. Well, that's where you and I are probably a little different, Susan. I do it 5 nights a week, right? Because I'm convinced, like in the Gospel of Thomas, if you bring forth what is within you will save you. If you do not bring forth your all-natural being, it's going to eat you for lunch.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what happens, on the deathbed when people look back and go, oh, I should have done this. I should have done that. Ha ha. Mitzi says, I was a Mormon Sunday school teacher for a minute. Now I'm a happy kitchen witch. All right, Mitzi. Never heard of it, Phil, too. But let me say this. As a part of my father's suicide, I spent a lot of years studying comparative religion. And I think it's called the history. If I remember the history of Joseph Smith, it says that in a clear spring wood in 1830, or on a clear spring day in a wood not far from my home, that's when he walked into the Sacred Grove, and that's where he heard the voice. So that's when, minus the ego, it was a clear spring day, right? Nothing was obscuring his all-natural being. And I think that's when the divine comes. That's when the fingerprints of providence comes. So when people say, oh, well, you're a big fan of religion, I'm a big fan of what religion was, the binding together of the individual with the divine in the moment.
Yes. Not
what it's becoming. People go, oh, because you had your little run-in with a priest when you were younger. No.
No.
Oh, I'm sure that contributed to it, right? Right?
Mm-hmm.
But the individual alone in nature. And that's why I think stained glass windows are. You're ever out in the woods, in the mountains of Colorado, or Henry, you got to have it in Ecuador. You're ever out in the mountains when the sun just crests the horizon, and you're in the woods, and you're looking out through the fog and the mist, and the sun starts to come up. That's the origin of stained glass. You'll never be able to convince me otherwise. Right?
No, and I'm thrilled because I get to do that every day.
God love you. That and the Milky Way. God love you.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead. I want to go, just because we only have a few minutes left, and I know Wayne will probably listen and going, why did you have to say that? We're looking probably another 10 days, probably the end of the month, I would think, that we're going to be able to launch the Transitional Radio webpage, I think, Henry. Is that your understanding? We're going to have a podcast. There's going to be some things that you're going to do to invite other people over to the channel. But there's also going to be some things you and I do together. There'll be some things we do separately, right? Tomato. Yeah. He's a little bit country. Yep. I'm a little bit rock and roll, or however it goes. Green Acres. You got it. So,
yep,
right? So what do you think? October 1st or thereabouts?
I think that's the shot, that's the one I would like to shoot for. To get everything coordinated enough to do the launch, officially have you on the Transitional Radio network or upload or whatever the terminology that.
We're using uplink.
Uplink.
Yeah, okay. Right. Doesn't that sound impressive?
And now that we can do this from internationally, we can do this from anywhere we want to. I would love to see October 1 hit it off, and then from there, the sky's the limit at that point.
Well, just so, plus I can always use the numbers afterwards, but wait till you hear your voice in the recording tonight. It sounds like you're right here.
Wow. Well, I'm glad to hear that.
It really sounds good. So you'll hear it when you listen to it. I go, wow, okay, so that worked out. All the legwork that we went through to figure out how to make that happen. I think it sounds fantastic. I think it sounds great, and I can't wait to be over at Transitional Radio. Of course, you'll still come to IPMNation.com. Transitional Radio will be brought to you by Matt Connerton and Jenny and the good folks at IPMNation.com. We'll be, I believe, IPMNation.com/live3. If you forget Transitional Radio, just IPMNation.com/live3. Videos will be there. Audios will be there. Podcasts will be there. Some snippets will be there. Oh, and I know something else, Henry. I was going to see. I may have someone else that wants to come over to Transitional Radio. Lee Rowley and the good folks at Sales Copy Academy, Copy That Speaks, some of the other things. I thought, that would be a cool little place to have as a home. So I'll talk to you. I'll talk to you, and I'll get you and Lee together. We'll talk about that and see what we can do to make that happen. John, thank you very much. The great transition is upon us. Susan, thank you very much. Rita, thank you very much. I appreciate it. John will be there.
Yep.
John, I know you will, and I thank you for that. We're excited, and I know John's got some cool adventures coming as well, so we're going to be looking forward to telling everyone about his adventures. And as Rita says, it's going to be awesome. Yes, it will. And Rita, you're probably listening, I would think. You're hearing the thread. But she might be listening to your voice live, so that probably doesn't count. But when she listens later, she goes, oh, yeah, Bri, the voice sounds great. Yeah, she's probably sitting there. But I would love her opinion as to how it sounds over the internet, right? How it sounds with everything you've done to dial it in, because I think you're going to be really impressed. Susan says, thank you, Brian. Very nice show. See you Sunday night and have a great weekend. Susan, to you as well. I hope you continue to recover. I hope it's all good. And I hope that I never, ever have to see you again in a full head bandage, right? I hope you never again have to go in and under the knife. That's my thought for you. Red says, sounds fabulous. He's got to be talking about you. Right. He's got to be talking about you. Right. So there you go. There's some good. All right, Henry, final thoughts before I let you bail, and then I'll go ahead and close it out here from the let me put our logo up again, from the Transitional Radio Uplink.
I love that. That is so cool.
In Columbus.
Yeah, I'm hoping that what I really want to see is the transitional concept really come through for everybody, to really be able to pull the whole concept of change, of understanding that every time we take a step forward, we have the opportunity to make that a fabulous step and leave behind what the step was before, so that we don't collect the garbage, we don't fill our gunny sacks, and we get to walk really light-footed. The old adage an old Japanese adage is to walk across the earth and never leave a footprint. And right. One of the examples they use that is to walk across rice paper and not tear the rice paper. That is our mission on this planet, is to not leave a footprint.
And you know what popped into my mind when you said that? Gandhi used to say, I refuse to let people walk through my mind with dirty feet.
Oh,
right? So that's
good.
Never be owned. Never be owned. Don't let someone walk through your mind with dirty feet. Let me say, Rita says, it sounds the best it has sounded since he started calling in. Fantastic. Joseph Haggerty is here. Henry, I cannot see Joseph's name pop up without thinking Colorado Springs, heavy metal, hanging out with Jamie and Candace and playing I guess you could call it a steel guitar. Watch it. I'll put it right into the light. Your glass breaking everywhere. I can't see Joseph's name without thinking of, air guitar is what I'm looking for. And he said heavy metal. So thank you again, Joseph. Very much. That sledgehammer's never leaving my side. Just, at least while I'm here.
Take the head off that thing there, Brian. I'm afraid you're going to drop that on your foot.
Oh, yeah. Well, you'll know when you see, cut to commercial. Or there'll be a little something that says, Brian had to run out. I'm crawling. It's like a 35-pound. He's right. It's heavy metal. It's like a 35-pound sledgehammer. I couldn't get a fake one, right? I had to get a real one. All right, Henry, we're going to let you go. Thank you so very much, brother.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, we'll talk to you soon.
All righty.
All right, everyone. That was Henry and Noel from Transitional Radio. We'll be launching hopefully here in a couple weeks. It's a heavy metal guitar. Yes, it is. And Susan, that's a very valid point. Never rent space in your head for free. That's right. It's a very good one. Rita, I agree with you. All right, we're going to go ahead and get out of here. Remember, we're here Sunday through Thursday nights. We will be back Sunday night, 8 p.m. And until we're together again, remember, never, ever, ever be owned by your own binge thinking, by the mashugana of the marketplace, whatever it is. Always have a fresh set of eyes, a fresh outlook, a fresh opinion about the fingerprints of providence at hand. And just like me in law enforcement, be a great detective, right? Be a great investigator and finding out what it is that the divine has planned for you, what the universe is throwing at your feet right now. Thank you so very much for joining us. We are going to go ahead and get out of here. And let me also thank, here we go, Wayne. Thank you so much, Wayne. I appreciate it. We'll see you all Sunday night. Have an absolutely fantastic weekend. All right. Hold the phone. Joseph screams out freedom in the thread. I can't let it go without freedom. Great movie, Joseph. Thanks again for hanging out. Freedom. Have an absolutely fantastic weekend, everybody.
IPMNation.com.